ignited the imaginations of an entire generation of budding scientists. Half a century later, The Eighth Day of Creation by Horace Judson did the same for another generation. For decades, scores of biologists and geneticists have attributed their decisions to become scientists to reading The Microbe Hunters or The Eighth Day of Creation when they were young. In subject matter, both are books about microbiology, but in form, they are adventure stories. As one reviewer put it, they feature, and I quote, epics of science that come to triumphant fruition. The Eighth Day of Creation, for example, portrays James Watson and Francis Crick's discovery of DNA's double helix structure in 1953 as the culminating event in molecular biology. It's a suspenseful thriller, and discovering the double helix is the climactic moment. The book was published 35 years ago in 1979. And yet, since then, DNA research has continued to advance and has helped us to see life on Earth wholly anew. It has challenged what we thought we knew about Neanderthals, cancer, crime fighting, human personality, and more. Its discovery has changed medicine and spawned whole new industries. Even in my own field of history, which would seem to be as far removed from cutting-edge molecular biological research as you can possibly get, it is being fundamentally altered by DNA. For example, advances in genomic archaeology have provided us with better understanding of why famines affected populations differently. Some human remains contain genes that show unusually high prevalence of lactase, an enzyme that breaks down lactose, the sugar that occurs in dairy products. The more lactase a person's body can produce, the more a person can tolerate and derive nutritional value from milk and butter. Populations with high levels depended less exclusively on grain for subsistence, and therefore could better withstand poor harvests in the short term because they were already accustomed to supplementing low grain yields with milk. On the other hand, those same populations were much more vulnerable when epidemic diseases struck cattle. Very close to home, my own colleague in the Harvard History Department, Mike McCormick, is reevaluating the Anglo-Saxon invasion of Britain on the basis of DNA research. Mike is not exaggerating when he calls human genetics, and I quote him, an extraordinary window on a vanished world of migrations and matings that take you back literally to the dawn of human time, end quote. The study of DNA, then, is more relevant to the study of history than might at first be obvious. At the same time, how scientists study, understand, and apply genetics also changes over time. So while DNA changes history, it also has a history, and we are living today in a watershed moment of that history. Let's look quickly at a case of DNA research now evolving. The emerging field of epigenetics studies how environment can alter the molecular processes that affect how genes get expressed. Researchers have shown that toxins, chemicals, and some kinds of trauma can alter how chromosomal code actually gets suppressed or articulated. Recent studies raise the intriguing possibility that social interactions might do that as well. For instance, research indicates that some genetic diseases progress differently in socially isolated people than they do in people with robust support networks. Learning more about how DNA replicates and expresses itself, therefore, might not necessarily reduce us to dehumanized chains of polypeptides, as some ethicists worried when the double helix was first discovered. It might instead help us to better understand exactly how and why the people in our lives, our friends and our families, have a transformational impact on us. The study of DNA, in short, began raising profound questions as soon as Misha began isolating white blood cells in 1869. It continues to do so today, and it will persist doing that into the future. It is thus a most fitting topic for consideration here at the Radcliffe Institute, where we embrace open-ended complicated, and cross-disciplinary investigations. To get us started, I would now like to hand things over to Janet Rich Edwards. Janet is a Radcliffe alum and an epidemiologist with research interests centering on maternal and child health. She holds dual appointments at the Harvard Medical School and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and she also serves as Director of Developmental Epidemiology at the Connors Center for Women's Health and Gender Biology at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Her research interests include the implications of pregnancy complications for future cardiovascular disease and the impact of childhood abuse on chronic disease outcomes. Janet?
Good morning. Thank you, Dean Cohen.